I don't expect to see a bunch of people here, but thought I'd do a last minute go live event here out at the orchard. Been mowing all afternoon. I'm gonna try to see where I can see your comments, if you have any. If someone can comment whether or not they can see me and whether they can hear me. All right, I got a comment. How's it going? All good? It's going good. It's a beautiful afternoon here at Lake Erie Chestnuts. Hopefully your guys' Sunday's going well. I've been mowing the orchard. I've done a combination of mowing with the lawnmower and then with the basically the brush hog. Maybe I thought I would do a little bit of an introduction of myself, and we can replay those as people join in here. My name's John. I live in Northwest Pennsylvania, and we have about about 10 acres, maybe just a touch less, of about 450 chestnut trees. We have very few grafted trees, but we do have about 29 different varieties of seedling trees, with a dominant variety being Chinese chestnuts. But I'm not a farmer. I'm in medicine as my primary field. I do this as a hobby, and also, you know, maybe we'll make some secondary income as time goes on, but really just found chestnut trees interesting. I've thought about that. Let's see, John, you've commented a lot before. I appreciate that. You use a zero turn. I actually considered buying a zero turn, and I'm still considering it. My only hesitation is getting it up to the orchard. I have some pretty steep stuff. I would have to trailer it up to get it here. James, nice to meet you. Thanks for tuning in here. So I thought about a zero turn. The only problem is the initial 2 hills I have to get up the ridge to get here. I don't know if you can really appreciate it, but I'll turn you around here. I don't know if you can see down over my head. The sun's right in my face, but you can see a white barn. We're several hundred feet up above that, and that's down by where my property starts. And I thought about, I'd worry a little bit about tipping it over, and I'd have to do a little bit of a trailer every single time. So that's the only thing that's held me back. But yes, a zero turn would be amazing. I do have a few groundhog holes that would be problematic by hitting that at full blast. I go right over that. But I use an old John Deere LA 105 42-inch mower to do the weaving in and out of the trees. And then I use my John Deere 5065E tractor with a 6-foot brush hog on the back to make the straight lines. But I thought I would walk you around here. Maybe I'll take the phone off of the main thing here. I'll turn it around. You may get a little wind noise, and I apologize about that, but thought I'd show you some of these trees and show you the burrs are really starting to swell up. Can you guys see those? So we got some really good burrs that are really starting to swell up. This is, you know, my favorite tree that I've shown you many, many times, but it's a ching. You can see that up there we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 just on the one stem. And you know, that's pretty exciting when you used to get excited about just seeing the one burr. I'll tell you, one of the exciting things about mowing this time of year is when you go to push these out of the way, they are no longer friendly little fuzzy little burrs like when they start. They are now at the make you say bad words out loud when you go to push them and you accidentally rake your finger across them. They definitely have an awesome protective shell. But if you remember, this is my tree that I released this year, and it's got this extra trunk, and I feel like the size really doesn't demonstrate itself. Terry, good. Thanks for tuning in. Palmyra. You can see the trunk here just now getting going, getting more mature look to it. It inches across at the base. But the reason why I'm not cutting this off, if you follow it over this way, we're still following it. It does have some burrs. So I'm taking some of those burrs, I'm gonna let them produce. And then next year, that trunk will not be part of this. As someone pointed out to me before, you can see where it's got some rubbing right there. Full sunny days, mid 70s, beautiful here. Like I said, I have 29 varieties that I have going here. Many of you have talked to me about whether or not I do grafted trees. I'm gonna take you over to my, I think I have 4 grafted trees. And I don't know if I've ever shown them other than maybe when I planted them. Give me a thumbs up or thumb down if you've ever seen, or maybe not a thumb up or thumb down, but you know, the comment thumb up or thumb down of if I've ever shown these. You'll see why I don't show them. You tend to show off your abs if your abs are good. You've never seen my abs, there's a reason for that. But the chestnuts that are grafted, they just don't do that well in this climate. And Michigan does do all grafted trees, but they're at risk of a sudden graft failure. So I'm gonna show you my grafted trees. So you see how beautiful and lovingly I take care of these, you know, as the season goes on. And then there's these weeds, and right here, here's a chestnut. Right here. This tree is 5 foot tall. I bought these from Washington Chestnut Company, I believe. So let's find out what this one is. My Slice of Heaven. I don't know if that's Joey or Chris commenting there of whether or not they knew that I had these, but I only bought a couple. I'm just afraid of putting too many things there, but this is a Zago. This was recommended to me by James Nave, or J. Michael Nave. If you've seen his comments, he's a awesome chestnut resource, awesome expert. So from the Washington Chestnut Company, this is a Zago grafted chestnut tree, but hasn't done much to this point, but it's my best one. The others are pretty weak. I do have them protected, but not to any large measure here. Here's another one. This one's only about 3 foot tall, and I think I planted these 3 years ago. And this guy is a Luvol's Monster. Now, my Luvol's Monster seedling trees did not do well here. So I don't know if that's a characteristic of that. They were seedlings, but my Luvol's Monster chestnuts just didn't translate here. So I always talk about tubes and a favorite tube and how they hold up. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that. I love the planter tree tubes, but the price was way too high for me over time. They jacked their prices, and that was even before COVID. But the big negative on them is they have this awesome perforation. Maybe I'll turn it around a little bit. They have a perforation every, maybe 3 inches of that, 3 inches no. So the perforation's all up and down to let your tree be able to harden off for winter time. My big negative is their tie. If you see here, their stake is awesome. It's very flexible, but their tie lasts about 1.5 years, maybe 3 years at the most. So those, I ended up coming out and putting zip ties on, but even they break unless you get the heavy duty ones. But here's the wire that's broken that it comes with. It's rubber coated, but it just doesn't last. So that's why I moved to the Tree Pro, and this is a tube topper I used to get it up past deer browse height. We have to get it past 6 foot here before the deer stop browsing. So I went from the Plantra tree tube to where I've gone almost exclusively to Tree Pro. I think they call them a miracle tube. This is what the top of them looks like. They just have a hole every so often. Tell me if that's clear or not. But you see that perforation line? That perforation line allows it to split as the tree gets bigger. So if you can't come out here for a couple years, which hopefully that won't happen for quite some time. Hopefully I'll be able to come out here for next 40 years and bother these trees, but I can foresee a period of time where the tree may get fat and start splitting the tube. But these will allow that to split. And I went to the Tree Pro tube with conduit. But the conduit, you must drive those at least a foot into the ground for that to stay in the ground. Otherwise it just bends too much and it ends up you're driving them back into the ground all the time. But I went to rebar as I got through my orchard, and now that's what I use. I use 1/2 inch rebar, 5 foot long, drive it 1 foot into the ground. And when it is drive it 1 foot into the ground, 4 foot out. Seems like it does a great job. By the time it ever rusts off, it'd be fine. My Slice of Heaven says, well, let me see that comment again. I'm trying to find that, I'm sorry. I use the Tree Pro tubes also. I do still drill extra holes in them. I don't think they have enough holes in them. I think that's probably true, especially if you don't get a lot of growth the first year. If they get up to 4 or 5 foot tall, you're probably okay. But if your trees are short, there's no holes in the bottom, I don't know, 18 to 24 inches, which makes it helpful if you want to spray around them. But again, you're struggling if you're wanting your tree to harden off in time to be ready for winter. So I don't want to take it too long, but I'm going to take us all on a walk. I was going to show us a little bit of the orchard as we walk down the rows into the sun, and then we'll come back with the sun at our backs, and it just is just gorgeous this time of day. Would be even more gorgeous in an hour or so. But as you know, we all got stuff to do. All of these trees here that you're seeing, I grew these from seed. Some of those on the far side, as I've talked about, the first 100 were seedling trees that I purchased as 1 year bare root trees. One of the things that I often struggle with is if I walk up on a tree that looks dead, what do I do with it? And I've talked before, the first thing I try to do is diagnose what happened. Because if it was from a deer rubbing it, that tree could come back, and it could come back very quickly because it's just got so much root structure, and it will come back and grow 6 feet in 1 year. But if you see blight, get rid of it. That's what I do. I pull it out, burn. 900-foot rows. Taught when I was first thinking about doing chestnuts, and that I should put trees on the hilltop or the hillside, not in the valley. That way you don't have to worry about the late frost zapping the blossoms in the very late spring, which around here, our last May 12th, something is our last frost. If anybody has any questions, shoot them at me. I'm going to do this right now that you're growing. I know Joey out there on My Slice of Heaven, he has a whole bunch of chestnut trees, and he's working on expanding his orchard right now. You should look at his page. He does a whole different version of this. He uses a track loader to do his clearing. Daniel, do I prune my chestnuts? I pruned chestnuts my very first spring after I planted them. I started these trees, my first trees in 2015. I planted 3 trees in 2014, but then I planted a whole bunch in 2015. And so spring of 2016, I did prune. I didn't feel like it helped, and I feel like I may have hurt some of my trees. So I do not prune any longer. However, will I be doing some pruning? Yes. This is an example. This tree has 2 trunks. As long as the 2 trunks are going up vertically and are 6 foot before the first branches, they're going to be okay. All right, Rodney, I'll talk to that in just a second. So I will be doing some pruning to get them up above the tractor, but otherwise I don't do any pruning when they're in the tubes. Apple trees get clogged when they get in the tube, they will get clogged. You'll get choked out trees if you don't prune them. That's my experience. But chestnut trees just give up on their branch and just go to the top branch. And so you don't have to prune them. Rodney, did I have gypsy moth? I had horrible gypsy moths for 2 years, both 2020 and 2021. But my understanding is gypsy moths get a disease, a fungus, and it basically controls them. And this year, I had very limited gypsy moth. They'd been crushing my oaks and hurting my chestnuts. And I would describe my damage as very minimal this year. So we're walking back here. These trees, these are from bare root seedlings. They were 2015 planting. Now, if you live farther south, Kentucky, Tennessee, Carolina, you may see a tree that looks like this after 4 years. Also, I've gotten lots of suggestions, yelling at, all capital letter suggestions, that I should not let grass grow around these. But I'll tell you, I read a study from Penn State talking about orchards and competition. And it said that early on you will get better production and more vegetative growth if you control that. And it was talking about a planting strip, a sterile strip, and then controlling around that. But I was going to say that after 18 years, they had no difference between the two. So I'm going to say I'm not as worried about controlling that. Let me see what this comment says here. Had 1 tree grow, let's see. Rodney said seedlings grew 5 foot the first year. The last 2 years, gypsy moths tried to wipe them out. And then My Slice of Heaven said, hey Rodney, I had a tree grow like 10 foot the first year. It only grew 3 foot this year, but starting lateral growth. So I've commented on that before. Look at this tree here. This tree is maybe, but it lateralized as soon as it came out of the tube. So you can see they usually do 1 vertical stripe and then they go to their lateral growth. And this tree every year is just covered in burrs. And my tag has fallen off of this tree. I think it's a shing tree. I think that's shing. I don't know, can you see those burrs? Look at this thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Every one I pulled down has multiple burrs. You can see all the burrs up there. What I find interesting too, just like my dog here, Izzy, she is laying in the shade. The deer, I don't know if they know the chestnuts are coming. They will lay down right next to the tree underneath where they're getting ready to drop. It's pretty amazing. Now here's a tree. We talked about choosing what to do with a tree that's dead. That tree greened up and then died. And when I talked about this on a video, well, we got bees everywhere. I'm going to back away. But we determined, I talked about this on a video a couple weeks ago, the deer rubbed that. I don't know if you can see that. Caused that death. And look how much growth happened in 1 year. From below that, and it's 8 foot already. So this tree should do fine in the future. But I'll say growing chestnuts has been pretty satisfying so far. It's not without work. This 30 by 30 foot planting makes it easier to weave in and out of as I mow them. The 15 foot has me, that's on the other side of the orchard, working harder. But you know, you got to zig and zag back and forth. That one does have me thinking of some controls. Pruning, we talked about pruning there. Pruning, I don't prune. I have thought there is a Japanese way of doing it. The trees, I think China also does it, but my resource from the University of Missouri says you can do this very intensive open center pruning. That can be pretty awesome. Brian Heine says, my Dunson chestnuts did great. Hold on. Did great this year. Came out of the grow tubes by 1 foot the first year. Again, if you have ideal conditions and a great growing season, which I would describe as plenty of intermittent rain right after you plant them, and then lots of heat, your trees can do awesome, especially if your pH is 5.5. If your pH is 7 and it's really wet or there's no rain, you may struggle. But you know, like I said, if you're Kentucky, be curious where you're from there. You may be in PA. Down south of here is a whole different planet. I was in Pittsburgh for a while. Yeah, rocking retirement outdoors, watching from Fairbanks, Alaska. Looking great as usual. That's a man in uniform. Thanks for the comment. Thanks for watching. Well, let's see. I use my Ventrac. All right, Brian, tell me what that is. A Ventrac. William Hoff says, chestnuts love nitrogen. What do you recommend for fertilizer? It depends on your soil, but if you use a publication, if you type in growing chestnuts, University of Missouri PDF, if you type in that University of Missouri how to grow chestnuts PDF, you will get basically a how to grow chestnuts. And basically it's all based off of the nitrogen. I use a balanced one, 12 12 12, 10 10 10, 19 19 19, but I do math. I hate doing it, but I do math, and they tell you the amount of nitrogen to calculate. Now I've talked about this before. I've fertilized several years. I've fertilized other years I didn't. This year I did not fertilize. It's painful, and the reason why it's painful is because your trees aren't as beautiful. Ventrac is a tractor. I like it. I'll have to look that up. This year I didn't fertilize the trees. As they mature, supposedly if you fertilize them too much when they're young, you can hurt overall fertility. I don't know if that's true. It doesn't make sense to me, but some people that may have more knowledge than me have suggested that. So I didn't fertilize, but you know, over time the trees around here don't seem to need to be fertilized, because I've seen some chestnuts in people's yards that aren't fertilized. They look awesome. We'll put you in the shade here. How do I control Japanese beetles? Well, I don't control Japanese beetles, because fortunately here I have them, but they do not, you know, defoliate like I had problems with the gypsy moth caterpillars over the past couple years. They crushed them. And so those of you, I've read people in Kentucky, Indiana, having big time problems with Japanese beetles. I don't have a solution for them unless you have some way of doing grub control in the orchard floor. You can control them because that's where they go, and they're mainly in mowed areas from my understanding, although I'm certainly not an expert in pest control. So if you could apply a grub control, maybe you can control them that way. Can I show a close-up of my stakes again? Okay, yep, I can take you there. So the best stake, but costs money, a lot of money, from Plantra is this triangular stake. It's triangular, it comes with a driver, stake driver, and it's a pretty sweet stake. It's got flexibility and it's strong. I'll walk to the other things. Brian says, what awesome looking trees. Yeah, I'm so fired up to have trees, and you know, it starts out as looking like a tube farm. I used to talk about the tube farm. It was looking at a bunch of tubes, but now it's starting to look like a little bit of an orchard, and we will, you know, have a limited amount of chestnuts for sale this year. You can see chestnuts up at the top here, burrs anyway. That's something as I'm walking to the stake here to answer this question. How do you spell chestnut burr? And people that know chestnuts, which is not me until I started this, but people that know a lot more than me, insist that chestnut burr is spelled with one R. So how many people agree with that? What ideas, William, in Wisconsin, what ideas do I have for collecting them? My idea so far is that I'm going to harvest them, and I'm going to harvest them almost all at once. In China, they collect them even when the burrs are green. The chestnuts will mature while they're still in the burr, and they you can let them just, they have mountains of them, and let them mature. And Chinese chestnuts are very sweet as they mature, and so that's what they do. But right now it's me picking them up. Some of the bigger orchards, for example, Route 9 Cooperative in Ohio has Amish people, and they pay them $10 a bucket or something like that. We had some time of, let's see, rockin' retirement, with some time of moth attack. Our persimmon trees in Conneaut, all of our Dunsans are doing great. Lots of burrs I see on your tree. Yes, absolutely. Press Marketplace, I thought burr was with 2 R's too, but I've been told no. So here's the stake that I use to answer that question. This is 1/2 inch rebar. I haven't priced it recently, but it's cut in 5-foot sections. My local hardware store will take 20-foot sections and cut it into 5-foot sections for no charge. And the total cost to me, that I haven't priced it recently, was about $1.60 per 5-foot stake. I think that was what it was, something like that. Maybe it was less than that. I've also used these treated pine stakes, which will last 5 or 6 years. They're pretty good. They're not incredible. Now this is a neat tree. I don't know if you can see that. This is a tree I planted last spring. It's a Schlarbbaum. Now Schlarbbaum, its little claim to fame is that it's extremely cold hardy. And since we've had low temperatures, I think I've read a note saying it's survived temperatures in the -20s. So when you see something like that, it's interesting to try to grow that. Rebar is the way to go. I agree. It's a good price. It lasts longer than you'll ever need it. And yeah, my persimmons that go back to your comment there, Rockin' Retirement Outdoors. My persimmons are doing great. They're going to produce their first fruit this year. But I've had something unusual. I have 2 male plants, it turns out, and 1 female. The males have kept their really deep green look, but the female has gotten a lighter green as the season went on. I don't know if that's related to it producing fruit or if I injured it, because I don't know. Anyway, hopefully it doesn't die, because it's my one girl tree. So the trees are growing good. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was going to be out here mowing anyway. This whole row here that you can see here is grown by seed, started in my basement. And the satisfaction that you get from seeing that is very good. You feel like you did something. So, you know, I know a lot of you are doing the same. And it's just, you know that in the spring I don't mow this area, so it ends up looking pretty ratty. But every year in the winter, we find old nests of 3 or 4 turkey. So it makes it well worthwhile to leave this go. We always jump a fawn or 2. So you know that leaving these rows with the thicker stuff between is doing good things for nature. And at the same time, I can get the grass low to find all the burrs and the nuts that drop coming up. So my final answer on what my plans are for collection, if I get into huge harvesting, I'm going to hire, I may do a U-pick, but if I do a U-pick, it won't be every day open. It'll be a time thing where people, this is your day to come out. And if you don't show up, you don't get chestnuts this year. It'll just have to be like that. I think people do that. I think Red Fern Farm does that in Iowa. And that works well. So they can come out as a family and pick as many nuts as they want and go from there. So don't want to drag this out. Just wanted to check in. Haven't done a Facebook Live or a YouTube Live ever, I don't think, but I've done a Facebook Live once 500 years ago. Lawn sweeper together. You could do that. There are nut sweepers that you can see. If you type in Chestnut Ridge of Pike County on YouTube, you may see a nut harvester that they have. They have one that sweeps fingers and sweeps them all into a windrow, and then they come along with something that has wheels that come together, and the wheels break the burr open, and somehow or another, the nut is heavier. It drops into the big, forklift liftable container, and then there's a kind of an escalator that brings the burrs out the back and then back into the orchard. But that's, we haven't even talked about chestnut weevils. Maybe we'll talk about chestnut weevils. That's my biggest worry going forward. If I don't get nuts off the ground within a day or 2 of them falling, we're going to get weevils in here. We have weevils around here, and we're going to have to start doing warm water baths, which you can set up. It's kind of like a giant sous vide if you ever use one of those for cooking. I've done it for those chestnuts that I've shown you in Asbury Woods, that older orchard. And when I brought them home and I treated some and didn't treat some, the ones I treated, you couldn't even tell they had nuts. But beyond that, the ones I didn't treat, they had worms in them coming out within 3 or 4 days. And people don't like worms in the nuts if they're going to eat them. It's high protein source, but I don't want them. So I understand that. But the next problem for me is weevils and controlling them, because keeping them out of the nuts and either getting a sprayer license to know how to spray. There's 2 sprays, or 1 spray that you use twice, as far as I understand. So I probably have to get a spray license for that. I'll have to figure that out. And then it'll be storing them as I get ready to sell them, whether I want to sell them commercially or if I want to just sell them locally, because there's a big demand. No matter where any of you are, there's a big demand for chestnuts. I'm sure you found that. So I thought I'd spend a few minutes talking to you from the orchard. I got the old Tundra lined up, ready to go. Got to go meet the family. School starts Tuesday. Football happened on Friday. Let's see. High is American chestnut grown in my field. That's Daniel. No American chestnuts. We have chestnuts with American genetics, the Dunstan. But again, that amount of American is extremely small. The trees, if I put them right next to a pure Chinese, you would struggle to tell which one's got Dunstan. Occasionally you get a Dunstan that gets that vertical growth. But Dunstan, the American piece is very small, but I don't have any pure Americans. That brings me to another question as I get ready to go. But will I grow the American chestnut that's going to be GMO? Absolutely. I'll do that. I'll definitely grow the GMO. I know that people have different issues with GMO and so forth, but I think having an American chestnut that has 5 genes versus entire chapters taken out of its genetic code with a hybrid will be just fascinating to grow. All right, I'll look at the final couple comments here. Rodney, really appreciate the live show. Very informative. Great comments by everyone. My Slice of Heaven, we were working on our orchard expansion today, but got rained out. We needed the rain, but not enough. Yeah, I know. It's like when you have, that's why I came out today instead of tomorrow. It's supposed to finally rain again here. I'll ask everybody a question as I get ready to go. Have you seen the secret project in the background of any of my videos in the past year? I've had a big project in the past year, and it occasionally shows up in my videos. I'm gonna do a video series on it. I'm just curious, anybody got any guesses? Have you seen any of you? Well, I'll leave you to think about it. I'm excited to show it to you. Oh no, the food plot, that's a good guess, but the food plot, I've shown it to you and it's no secret. The corn is a disaster. Unlike my neighbors here, which is right behind me, his corn is awesome. Mine is a disaster. Well, I don't know. If you ever go back and watch through a few videos, every now and then you'll see the project. Not switching to hazelnuts. That's a great guess though. I love hazelnuts. I'm going to plant about 20 more of those next year, but I'm not planting 400 more. But nope, there's a project I've had going on, and trials and tribulations and the joy of it. Again, if you're proud of it, you show it immediately. And I am proud of it, but it's taken some work to get it to where I want it, and I think we're close. But over the next few months, with that horrible teaser, I'll be releasing a video series. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. Have a great night, everybody. John, Lake Erie Chestnuts. Remember, if you're not growing, guys, free pound of nuts if you guess right. I can do that. Free pound of nuts if you guess right, but you have to guess by midnight tonight. And then you have to tell me the video you saw it in. All right. Just what you want to do is rewatch all my videos. All right. Thanks for following me here, guys and gals. Have a great night, y'all. Remember, if you're not growing, you're dying.